So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the ADHD Reframe Project podcast with me, host Emma Craven. And today I am joined by another Emma. So, Emma, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Emma. So my name's Emma Stone, and I'm the co-founder of ADHD Coaching Agency. Good to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Wow. I was just looking at your LinkedIn before we joined the session, and fascinated just to kind of know where the idea came from. What and why
Mm.
did you set that up?
Yeah, so basically, it was one of those kind of, I suppose, light bulb moments where I just wondered if there was a gap and a need for an agency that offered the highest quality trained ADHD or DHD coaches all in one place, so that for the person looking for that type of support doesn't need to worry about, is their coach professionally trained? Have they got the right qualifications? And because we are in an unregulated industry, anybody can set themselves up as a neurodivergent coach. It was a good decision because there is a massive need for this, and kind of 9 months on, and it's, yeah, very busy.
So I don't really know a lot about I know about life coaches, but ADHD coaches or kind of coaching in general is not really anything that I've thought about before. So what is an ADHD coach?
So it's somebody who's obviously trained in that area. And what a coach will do is work with their client on any area that the client has specific trouble with, linked with their neurodiversity. So it could be anything from RSD, it could be executive function, it could be anything in the whole list of the kind of main traits that get in the way of my ADHD. But everybody's is so different. And so it could be that your coach is working with you on executive function, but your executive function looks extremely different to the next person. So but what the main thing about coaching is that the coach will ask questions, and coaching is all about the questions that you ask your client, because coaching is about sort of teasing out from you what is already within you, but you're not able to access it because you haven't been asked the right questions.
Yeah.
So it's very kind of, I guess, important that coaching is completely not therapy. It's nothing like therapy. It's not about looking back in the past. It's about how to go from here and move forward.
I'm glad you just said that because I've actually done counselling training. I'm not a qualified counsellor because I didn't finish a diploma, but I have done some um, training and courses around counselling. So yeah, it's good that you've differentiated between the two.
Mm.
So would you like to maybe talk a little bit about your ADHD diagnosis, please?
Mm. Yeah, sure. So I was going about my life kind of struggling and always doubting myself and thinking that, I've got such amazing qualities, and what I'm good at, I am fiercely good at. But the stuff that I was not good at, it was just a constant confusion. I just couldn't understand,
Mm.
And my husband would like, quite often say to me, why'd you do that? And I didn't know why I did these certain things. And it was my best friend who got her diagnosis. And she basically said to me, why don't you get one? And I really wasn't that, I hadn't been thinking about it at all, but I thought, "Do you know what? Why not?" So I went on to Right to Choose. I went through Right to Choose. I waited a year and a half until I got my appointment. And then I had my appointment, and it was very long and very intense. And at the end of it, it was, yes, you have ADHD. And you'll be contacted about medication if that's what you want. If that's not what you want, there's not a great deal else that we can do.
Yeah, off you go. Yeah.
So I was a bit stunned. I think I was relieved. I think I was excited, and I don't know, I just needed a few days for it to register and for it to just, sit with me. But I'm also 16 years in recovery from alcohol, and personally, I didn't want to take medication. So
Congratulations. That's amazing.
thank you. Nearly 16 years in a couple of months.
Well done.
And thank you so much. And I just didn't want to take meds. So after it settled with me and I thought, okay, that's it. I have been diagnosed with ADHD. I found this enormous sense of relief, and I feel as though the shame that I'd been carrying for all those years. So I was diagnosed at 56. So it was late in life. And I felt such a lot of less shame around all the things that were the question mark over, why do I do this? Why am I so sensitive? Why can't I go into the kitchen and start a task and then just simply can't finish it because I have to be distracted because it's too boring what I'm doing, and it's, the dopamine um, hit isn't there for me. And it kind of started to make sense. So that was when I started to investigate what other support was out there for me. Because now I had the diagnosis, I thought, well, there must be something that can help me, because certainly I knew that I needed some support. And that's when I found that when I was searching of what else there was available, it was overwhelming, it was confusing, and really just a really unpleasant experience. And so I gave up looking, and then I sort of just thought, I wonder whether this is something that's needed. Now, my background is executive search and headhunting, so I've been in recruitment all my life, and I was exceptionally good at in my recruitment years. And I'm so delighted not to be in that anymore because it's brutal. And so really my agency is a similar coaches work with clients, whether that's in businesses, whether that's private paying clients, whether that is clients coming through Access to Work, whether that's clients that are facing financial difficulties. And we do have an option to give extremely low cost coaching. So we try to cover every area for everybody. But
Okay.
we also match every single situation. There's no point having a directory because that's just complete overwhelm. So we match.
Yeah. Oh, so a little bit like a dating agency, but
Tinder, yeah, Tinder for coaches. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, yeah. No, that just popped into my head as you were saying that. And I like the fact that you've highlighted that you offer, maybe income related sessions, affordability, because I do know particularly for people that are either in a very low income household or are not able to work or are just struggling financially, to get access to support is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
That was going to be one of my questions I was going to ask you, actually, because I love the fact that you actually offer like affordability, because I think that is really important. I think everybody should have access to some support.
Absolutely. Because somebody once asked me when I started the business about 9 months ago whether I was going to specialise in an area. And I said, well, no, because neurodiversity is everywhere. So how can I specialize in something? You know, um, whether it's just adults and teens, or it's like, well, no, because it affects everybody, children, families. So no, we don't specialize. And that's why we have such a wide offering. Well, I say a wide offering. The offering is very niche, which is ADHD, ADHD coaching. But the fact that they are not able to afford it, I kind of thought, well, there must be something that we can do for those people as well. And
Yeah.
so we do offer something for people that, can't afford it.
I mean, and I just think it's, yeah, the fact that you've implemented that as part of like an accessibility for people that have no access to anything because
Mm.
they're either on a low income or something. So
Our signing up process is very straightforward for the client. We haven't made it too complicated at all. It's ADHD friendly. But there will be certain things that the client will want to focus on. And so those specific areas, that is the thing that's matched with the coach that has got that special area of interest.
okay, that
And then a
makes sense.
chemistry call happens for each person.
Of course. Yeah, of course. So are there any specific things that you struggle with day in, day out?
Me personally,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, lots of things. Yeah, absolutely. Regulating my emotions. Um, um, I have ADHD is the minute I wake up and the minute I go to bed. I believe that I do have possibly ADHD, but that is self-identifying. That hasn't been diagnosed. But the beauty of the coaching that I've had is that I know I've got strategies to use. So when I'm struggling, I'm able to call in on those strategies. But they take practice because I've got quite a number of many years behind me of just struggling and not having any strategies in place. But of course, yes, I do. Of course, I still struggle. I think it's just the nature of being neurodivergent. But yeah, the interesting thing is that, as I said, the shame around my struggles now are so much more, is so much less than they were. And I think I'm just kinder to myself now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do think it's the self-compassion that we've lacked, um, f- as our undiagnosed selves. But then I think we do give ourselves a hard time because there's expectations from society that,
Yeah.
we need to fall into these specific
Mhm.
kind of guidelines, and we need to do like 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and sit at a desk or whatever it is that the job that you
Mhm.
do.
It made me think about the fact that when I was at school and my reports used to say, if Emma sort of did any work, she does have potential. Well, I didn't know back then that I had potential. I just thought that, I wasn't good at anything. And there were certain things that obviously, surprise, surprise, I did excel at, but they weren't like you said, the sort of mainstream subjects that, I could have cried with boredom at school because it was so uninteresting that I was not able to retain the information. And
Yeah,
then, of course, I was just labeled, being naughty, because misbehaving was much more fun.
yeah.
Um,
And it often makes, when I reflect back to my childhood and when reflect back to when I was at school, and I think about the things that I struggled with, um, it, it kind of sometimes I feel sad and angry that I didn't get diagnosed sooner. But then
Mm.
I think, like, a lot of the experiences that I had as an undiagnosed ADHD woman stood me in good stead and almost built stepping stones into, like, my confidence and, um, who I am today. So although it does make me feel sad to think back to school and think, well, if I'd have had the diagnosis then, it may have made a difference, but that's not the case. I'm not going to wallow in that too much
No.
because it's just pointless, isn't it? So,
Mm.
I like to kind of look at what my strengths are and work with them rather than thinking about, things that I struggled with many, many years ago. And yeah, shame I think for me has been huge. You're too oversensitive, you're too loud,
Mm.
you talk too
Mm.
much, you never sit still. You're just too overwhelming. Why
Yeah.
can't you just be quiet and sit down? Well, actually, no, I'm not going to be quiet and sit down anymore because I've lived with
Yeah.
that all of my life and I'm not doing it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm the outspoken person that just, wants to go in and shake everything up and then leave again because I'm like, why should we sit down and be quiet? We actually have a
Absolutely.
lot to offer, I think. As ADHD women, we have so much to offer, and I like to
Yeah.
kind of focus on that rather than focusing on the people that want me to be quiet and sit down.
Yeah. 100%. I think, I was quiet for so long, but masked for so long,
Yeah.
and I'm not masking anymore. I sent an email out to some of our corporate coaches yesterday about a project, and I read the email 3 or 4 times, sent it, read it again, and I'd missed 2 words out. And I was like, I could have
Yeah.
kicked myself, but my business partner, I messaged her straight away and said, I can't believe it. And she said, don't worry about it. It's fine. And instantly, yes, that's exactly right. It is fine. It's not a big problem. The recipient would have definitely understood what I was saying in the sentence. It was just a couple, and I think that's why I spent so many years, with this, putting so much energy into trying to be a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And it was really, really, really hard to do that. And I never could do it.
Yeah.
And it's a spiral. So continually, I always just felt, well, I'm no good. And that's
Yeah.
why I've embraced this. When I was diagnosed, I've embraced it, and I feel very protective over. I really do. I feel very
Yeah.
protective over it.
Yeah. And that's really nice to hear from me as well. Because I think as a late diagnosed ADHD woman, we need to have a tribe of women that feel protective around, I do that. I say to people, I think in ADHD, I talk in ADHD, and I write in ADHD. So if you haven't got ADHD, then I'm probably not going to make a lot of sense in written words because I can't articulate very blunt in the way that, like, my deliverance when it's through written form, um, which, and my grammar and spelling is almost bad, 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 but I'm getting better. But yeah, I think I worry sometimes because I am very, like, the way that I write things is very straight to the point and it's very blunt, and it's like, so then I add emojis in and then I'm like, okay, I'm meant to try and be a little bit more professional. But and it's just, you've said that about that perfectionism, and I just, it's exhausting, isn't it? When
Mm.
you're kind of just trying, and a lot of the time we impose that on ourselves. So it's not even anyone else. We just think that and I wonder if this comes from us being late diagnosed, because we've always had to kind of mask, or we've had to fight to use our voices, or we've had to, fight to have a seat at the table, let's say. Maybe that's why we become such perfectionists. And I think that is yeah, it's a little bit, it's sad, I think, when I say
Mm.
that, because I think, we're amazing as we are. And yeah, I mean, don't ask me to do a lot of written words because I'm just
No.
doesn't happen.
Or numbers. For me, written or numbers um,
Yeah.
aren't my go-to things. But like I said, I now know, leave me to get on with what I'm good at.
And I think it's really important for most businesses, whether they're your own businesses or whether you're employed. I think, it's one of the main things that I think is really important to implement is allowing neurodivergent employees or business owners or staff or whatever it is to play to their strengths. Because if you build a team of people who all work the way that they need to and all work, use their strengths in the best way, then you're going to have like this a dynamic, amazing team of
Mm,
people. And yeah, I
mm.
don't know. Yeah, it's just so, yeah. I mean, it sounds amazing. I'm just,
I love what you said there, because so many times you hear people say, "Oh, I couldn't do what you do." And I look at people and say, I couldn't do what you do. And they're so good at it. And yeah, something really, I say something's gone wrong. It hasn't really gone wrong, but how much better could it be if, in all these years, people were able to do what they're good at? And what we're hoping to do, certainly, um, in the corporate world and in the business world, is for those businesses to perform better in terms of not only potentially less time off with sickness, but
yeah.
also, um, what was the other one? It was sickness and, well, retention of staff as well. Because if the staff member is feeling trusting in their line manager, and their line manager understands neurodiversity and the challenges, the member of staff will be able to go to the line manager and say, "I'm feeling this way." There'll be total understanding. The person won't feel any shame. um, there's some times where in families there's coaching sort of within the family so that everybody understands what's going on.
Hmm.
So yeah, it can present itself in lots of different ways, but fundamentally getting the best out of what you've got.
Yeah. And I do see it. I see it a lot, and I do hear it a lot that, particularly people with ADHD don't really kind of get to work in a way that's good for them, but also not just that, but is good for the company or wherever they're working. And I think that's a real shame, because I think that there's, you've got hidden untapped potential that basic, and all you need to do is make a few adjustments,
Right.
and then maybe you've got, a completely different employee. And personally for me, I don't. I talk a lot about molds, and I talk a lot about I don't fit a mold of anywhere, so I don't really fit a mold in corporate or professional audiences or environments. Audiences. I don't know why I said that. I also don't fit the academia mold, and I don't really fit anyone's mold of the expected kind of person that they want. And, I'm disorganized, I'm late, I talk too much, I do all of these things. And a few years ago, I just thought, I'm not going to kind of force myself to fit someone else's mold. So I'm making my own mold.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I
so
love.
I could, yeah, I'd be happy to go in and talk to most people, but I just don't think they'd want me to come back again, because I talk a lot. And yeah, but I think it's like, the point I was trying to make is, I think it's a shame sometimes, because if, although I am building my own mold, and I do think there unfortunately, is still a lot of people that are not really that comfortable to do that. So then they kind of just
Mm.
fall in with the norm. And I don't really like the word normal because no one is normal. I'm normal to me, but to everyone else, I'm not normal. Um,
Yeah.
and I do think there's a lot of a lot of people that can't fight for themselves or can't,
Mm.
speak up and will just try and kind of force themselves to work in a very rigid way.
Mm.
Um, and I also think it's a shame that there's not more corporate or executive people like me. And I think that is a huge shame because, you know, the messy chaos, everything that that someone with ADHD has to offer is going to be useful somewhere, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's a little bit exhausting trying to find out where that is going to be useful, if that makes
Mm.
sense. Because
Mm.
when I used to work in an office, and I just, yeah, it wasn't really for me. The amount of times I got told off to stop talking, be quiet, stop talking. Why do you talk all the time? And I'm like, I didn't know I had ADHD back then. Um, but yeah, the amount of times that was said, and I'm like, I think the talking sometimes creates the dopamine hit in the brain.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's but I obviously didn't know about the ADHD at the time, but to kind of keep getting told that like every day or every other day, or just be quiet or what. And I was just talking to the lady that sat next to me, and we were just having a bit of chit chat. We were working away. We weren't just sitting there talking, and it's like, but I'm only just talking. I wasn't like I was, disrupting the whole office, but yeah, I do think I do would like to empower other people to find their mold or to build their own mold and kind of just almost be confident in the fact that you might not fit in anywhere, but you're going to fit in somewhere. Um,
100%. Because so my husband, we don't, yeah, we're not sure what he, what he is, but he's definitely not ADHD. And so we have, our own struggles because obviously we clash in certain areas.
Yeah.
Um, but I think for somebody like him, from what I've known of him, he clearly doesn't have these struggles. And so he's never needed to find what's right for him, apart from when he left college and decided what job he wanted to do. And then he's done that and that's been his career. But, for us, certainly for me, um, I think you're so right in as much as, you know, I don't think we necessarily know ourselves. And so to be allowed to explore that, I think is so important. And I don't believe many organizations yet allow people to explore what it is that is right for them, because what's right for them will be right for the organization. Because I know for sure that given the right tasks, that person with ADHD will work their absolute socks off
yeah.
because we're committed, we're loyal, we're trustworthy, etc., etc.
Yeah. And again, I think it's such a shame that, I mean, the world probably is getting better slowly. But it is
Yeah.
such a shame. I did a lot of support work when I was working, and I used to support vulnerable people in the community. And I did a lot of advocating for them as well, and I loved, um, you know, like helping the people and doing everything I could within my power to help them. But when it came to the admin, that was the worst bit for me because I was
Mm.
just like, like I've already said, written work for me it's not only is it boring, but I've always struggled with it, and then it's just almost forcing myself to have to do it.
Same, yeah.
Um, so it's like if I could just talk for well, I do talk anyway, but if I could get paid to talk about ADHD, I'd be happy about that, to be honest. But um, yeah, what's your special interest, Emma? ADHD. Okay. People are. My partner's the same. He's definitely, well, he's definitely autistic. There's no doubt in my mind that he's autistic. But yeah, there is it, there's areas that we are misunderstood sometimes, I think. But bless him, he does always try and understand as hard as that can
Yeah.
be. But
Yeah.
it's really nice to kind of for him to, although he doesn't understand it, he still empathizes. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, another tangent. But yeah, I think it's, and I'm not suggesting that companies should like allow employees to do certain parts of the job and not do other parts of the job. But I think, something very simple back then, which would have enabled me to dictate, which I probably could have done on my work phone, actually, now I'm thinking about it.
Mm.
Dictating or don't make me go to the office to do my admin because it's an open office and I'm easily distracted. So it's
Mm.
just almost pointless me being sitting at a desk because I can't, it's too much going on around me.
Yeah.
So, either allow me to work from home to do the admin stuff or allow me to sit in a quiet room on my own. That would
Yeah.
have been an easy kind of fix for the ADHD anyway. But yeah, I do think I'm definitely on board with, creating, giving, empowering neurodivergent people, um, empowering them to kind of to get more reasonable adjustments and get
Mhm.
more suitable ways of working. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's yes, valuable because I think like 20 years ago, I'm 50 now, so maybe 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago when I was in my early 20s, I do sometimes think if I knew then what I do now, then maybe things would have been different for me. But then I
Mhm.
think, yeah, um, I don't know if I'd have wanted them to be different because, like, I'm building my life around ADHD now, so I wouldn't have been in a place to be able to do that before now. So I wonder if, and I love it when I meet other really strong, independent women that actually are building their life around their
Yeah.
ADHD, which I think is great for me to sit and talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I agree with you that if I do wonder how different it would be, I kind of think there's no point. I can't change it. And it has led me to where I am now. If I hadn't
Yeah,
gone into recovery 16 years ago, um, all those things, you know, um, so yeah, it's been tough. It's been a rough ride, but I'm probably stronger than ever now and more focused, more driven, without the kind of constant shame hanging over me as well, and confusion. I'm not confused anymore. I am
yeah,
what I am. That's it.
yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to just again congratulate you on your nearly 16 years in recovery. Um
Thank you.
I do think it is a very it's a niche topic to talk about ADHD and addiction. Um,
Mm.
and I've been sober since 2019. So I
Amazing.
understand. I
Amazing.
understand. Thank you. Clean from drugs since 2007, but I did start drinking again and got sober. But it's, yeah, so addiction is a little bit of a niche conversation that I like
Yeah.
to have. And
Mm.
particularly around alcohol, because the statistics around alcohol for undiagnosed women is quite high. That they're more likely to have, particularly undiagnosed. Um, that becomes the coping strategy. That
Yeah.
becomes their reward at the end of the day, and it is very
Yeah.
easy to fall into a pattern of drinking more than you than you actually do, and not realizing that it's becoming such a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is another sort of big topic altogether, and I was very aware of my diagnosis for me personally, not then meaning that, so I personally choose to, um, I attend Alcoholics Anonymous. I have done for 16 years, and that's what works for me. Um, and I wouldn't stop doing that because I need to remember that I can remember that feeling of what it's like to have alcohol in my system. And, yes, I've got ADHD now, but if I put alcohol in my system, then the craving starts
Yeah.
instantly. And
Yeah.
I can feel I can feel what that feeling feels like 16 years on.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've got a healthy fear of going back to that. So I kind of put my ADHD completely separate to my alcohol addiction.
Mhm.
Um,
Uh, yeah, and everyone's experiences are different, and but I do, yeah. You see, it's weird for me because when the psychiatrist that diagnosed me, I've because I've always been open about my drug addiction, and when I was younger, it was always stimulants, um. And the psychiatrist said to me when she was assessing me to be diagnosed, she asked me the question, "What kind of drugs did you used to take?" And she said that, and I told her that it was stimulants, and she said, well, that could be because you had undiagnosed ADHD, but that could also be because you've got an addictive personality, or the biology in your brain, and it just is easier for you to get addicted to even an addictive behavior. It doesn't have to be a substance, and it's and I like what you've just said then about keeping the two things separate. I did choose to take medication, and I am medicated, and I know, again, a medication is a subject that some people don't want to talk about because it's very personal. But I do think it's because I'm studying psychology at the moment, so I've actually kind of done quite a bit of research in addiction and ADHD within psychology and stuff, and I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by it all. And I don't really it's not that I don't like deal with them very differently. I just deal with my life as a whole, and the symptoms that present, these, certain things. I don't like being around a lot of people that are all drinking because I just don't feel comfortable with that anymore. I've just chosen not to do that. Um, but my health and my recovery is more important to me than, you know, and I need to put myself first. Um, so yeah, I love that you are still going to AA meetings. I've got my books and stuff somewhere.
have
I
you?
just, yeah, and I'm not saying you should never stop going because it's different for everyone. I haven't
Well,
been for a while now.
that's it, Emma. I think, and you taking meds is absolutely fantastic if that works for you, because it's it's totally the individual's choice, whatever works for them. And I've just become over the years so, um what's the word? I just don't judge anybody, it's whatever works for you works for you. And, with all the love in the world, it doesn't bother me. It's like, it's nothing to do with me. Because I think when I was working within my search years, my recruitment years, I always delivered absolute top quality. And that's why I was so good at it. And so that's why it was actually me and my son that started the business, and his background's psychology, my eldest son. Um, and he was equally fiercely driven by quality, wanting the
Yeah,
best quality out there.
it's great. And personally, what would your advice be to someone that's newly diagnosed or is waiting to be diagnosed?
Do what feels right for you, but get the right support. Do your homework, do your research. Just do what feels right for you. And I think sometimes what can happen is that people can take other people's advice and suggestions, and get quite overwhelmed with that, and then not know which way to go. So maybe don't rush into something. Take your time, and you know, I know what's right. You know, you have a feeling when you know what's right, and if the feeling is that I'm not sure, then I just pause for a bit until I
Yeah.
am sure.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you, Emma. Anyway, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure to
Thank
have you
you.
in this space today. I
Oh,
will post the links to Emma's website once I in the description of the podcast episode. But just a huge thank you to you, Emma. Thank you for yeah, you've obviously opened up another avenue, addiction. You brought that in, which is quite nice because that is something that I like talking about as well. But yeah, anyway, and to our listeners, enjoy the rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you are in the UK or globally. And yeah, goodbye for now.